What got me into AI was actually to make people not feel as special as they feel.
Welcome to Render, where we explore the future of AI and creativity.
I was the main inventor behind the natural language in Siri.
Hello, today on Rendered, I'm joined by Babak Hodjat, CTO for AI at Cognizant, where he leads the advanced AI labs. He's built everything from the core tech behind Siri to the world's largest distributed AI system, and he's also a science fiction author. Today, we will design an adaptive, self-evolving AI system, discuss what it takes to move AI from research to a real-world impact, and explore a surreal 3D art piece, part of our Rendered Exchange segment where art and tech collide. So let's get started. Thank you so much for being here, Babak. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Yeah, it's so good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. I would love to talk a little bit about your journey. Tell me a little about the work you're doing at Cognizant. What are you building right now and what are you excited about?
I am the CTO AI for Cognizant, and I run our AI R&D lab here in San Francisco. It's where I am right now. And we have a team of AI PhDs and researchers and some developers. We are measured by, our innovation and peer-reviewed papers that we publish and patents, and we are really set up to push the envelope on the state of the art in AI, but also then bring that in and capture that innovation in platforms and code that could be useful for our clients and helpful to the world. We also run our AI for Good initiative. Yeah, so that's what I do.
Cool. Is there a specific project that you're working on right now that you're really excited about? And how are you defining success for some of these like AI solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, I'm very, very excited because just yesterday we announced the open sourcing of our multi-agent accelerator, which is a platform that allows people to very easily create AI agents. I keep looking at the GitHub repository and looking at how many forks and stars we're getting. And so that's the exciting project we're working on right now. As far as measurement today, for especially agentic systems, the obvious measure is whether it has an impact on cost and efficiency. So if you're running a business and you want to reduce your costs and improve your efficiencies, that's kind of like a blanket, KPI, if you like. But beyond that, for every use case, there are basically goals, there are quality measures that are specific to that use case, and these AI systems can actually impact them and improve them as well. So measuring those various different aspects, often these things are multi-objective, so more than one aspect at the same time, and some of them are kind of in opposition with each other is what you have to do as you design and build these systems.
Makes sense. For a lot of these, you're almost replacing a process that exists today. So when you're measuring A against B, you have really clear metrics to understand both cost, time, efficiency, their improvements.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
However, on the AI for Good initiative, how do you measure success for that when maybe the ultimate goal isn't savings or efficiency?
Yeah, let me give you a few examples. We actually, back in COVID, we created a system that was the sort of the germinus of this AI for Good project. Back then, there seemed to be this dichotomy of, oh, we need to save lives versus, oh, we need to save the economy. And it was very clear for us that, you want to do both. And that's a multi-objective problem.
Yeah.
And it's some balance of that is acceptable that you want to hit. And so you task your AI to solve for that, and you build systems and you measure both, and then you give the policymakers and maybe even the general population a choice. Yes, you can do either of those extremes, like, save lives, like shut everything down and save lives versus, save the economy, just let everything be open and you're not saving that many lives. But there is something in between. What are you most comfortable with, and take your pick. Climate is another example where, energy prices is one consideration, but, climate and CO2 and impact on climate is another consideration. And again, in our polarized world, it ends up with, you being on either extreme, but that's really a false choice. And AI can help with that. In land use change, we have the same kind of aspects. There's, I think, a project that we've just recently kicked off that has to do with world hunger.
Yeah.
Almost without fail, it's about more than one objective at the same time.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's never black and white. It's never 0 or 1. There's always a little bit of a trade-off. And I feel like AI almost needs a little bit of like a rebrand because I feel like right now it's really just leaning towards one. I don't think people are realizing it really can be used for good and it's being done. It's just people aren't as aware as they should be.
Absolutely. I mean, our AI for Good initiative is actually structured under the 17 United Nations SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that you define these projects and a team of volunteers, all of us are volunteering for these types of projects to come in and help. It's our most powerful tool. Like, I mean, we just simply can't be sitting back and saying we're not going to use it because it has some, negative properties. We have to use it to solve our most difficult problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't
Definitely.
have a choice.
Okay, moving on to the question that I'm most excited for. You have 39 patents. I don't think I've ever met anyone who has 39 patents. Do you have a favorite? Tell us a little bit more about one of them.
Well, the first one is always the most interesting one. And actually, the first one had to do with a multi-agentic system. I used to, when I introduced myself, I used to say, yeah, I was the main inventor behind the natural language in Siri. And now I kind of add a little tagline to that and say, little known fact, the natural language behind the original Siri was multi-agentic because now multi-agentic is back in vogue again. And that first patent, which I think we filed for in either 97 or 98, was on using a multi-agentic system that can, understand natural language and map natural language commands to various different backends, API. So that's one of my favorite ones, but, obviously they're all your babies. They're all favorites.
Sounds like these agentic models existed 30 plus years ago. Is
They
that
did.
they did? Okay.
They did. So here's how it happened. I mean, it's an interesting story in that, we've come to AI agency from two different paths and we've ended up in, very similar place. Back then, most of us who got into AI, I got into AI in the late 80s, got into it with this notion of, oh, we can create a brain that's as good, if not better than the human brain. So it was about creating a one single generally intelligent system. And many still come into AI thinking that. We kind of gave up on it in the 90s. Actually, I think the first time someone talked about AI agents was 1989. In the 90s, the focus shifted to, okay, we can't create an AI system that is generally intelligent in our very, very complex world. So let's simplify that world and then have it be intelligent in a simpler world. And back then was the advent of the internet, and internet was very simple back then. It was just text and hypertext, and you would click around, and there were no search engines, and there were concepts of Gopher, and there's some really archaic. I'm not going to age. Well, I did, I guess. Anyway, and so the idea was, oh wow, you have these agents that are intelligent, and you need them to be autonomous because they're going off in the wild, in the wilderness of the few thousand websites that were out there. And they're reading the text so they understand natural language maybe, and they're searching for something on your behalf. And wait, what if they run into somebody else's agent and they want to collaborate, but then they want to hide some of the information that they have on your intentions? And, so multi-agency kind of was born through that. And there were elaborate inter-agent communication languages that were being defined and people working at different scales and granularities of agents. And so that was the world back then. The textbook on AI was called Artificial Intelligence, A Modern Approach. And modern in that context was agentic AI. This is the textbook I taught in 1998. Modern was, let's look at it from an agentic perspective. Fast forward to today, we do have large language models, generative AI, that is generally intelligent. It might not be super smart in certain aspects, but it is generally, you can ask it any questions in any language and it can answer. But the challenge now is, wait, if we want to use this thing, we need to tell it what we expect it to do. And often these large language models are better when you tell them, you are an expert in blah, and then they actually do better. And so in a weird roundabout way, we came back to, oh, we need to put them in a box and give them a smaller job description and a smaller world to solve. And oh, by the way, they will want to talk to other agents too. So we've come back. A lot of the concepts around multi-agent coordination, aligned versus non-aligned agent systems, even inter-agent communication protocols, a lot of that we stand to learn a lot from what was done in the 90s.
Okay. That's really interesting. I feel like we could pick your brain for hours on this probably. I have about 30 years to cover, but I really would like to take some time and learn about two books. You have the narrator, you have this book called The Konar and the Apple. Is writing a creative outlet for you?
I write, I always write. I'd never even imagined publishing, but I think it was a blessing that BART's, our local train system here in the Bay Area, didn't have internet. So I had a 45-minute commute and I would just sit in there and not being connected, I would just write stuff. And I wrote this science fiction novella called The Narrator. And it kind of came true in a creepy way. It is about an app that takes data from your like daily life through your phone and so forth. And it narrates a story around that in whatever theme that you would like it to narrate it to you. And I wrote it back before, GPT-3 came out. And then I actually think Google or Apple, I think Google came out with an app last year that did exactly that. So I posted on my LinkedIn. I'm like, yeah, that I think it happened.
That's awesome. We'll have to read those and I'll reach out with my thoughts on it as well.
I would love to hear your thoughts on them. It's been a few years since they came out, but yeah, I mean, it was a labor of love.
Cool. I'm going to move on to the last question in the segment. What advice would you give to someone who's just getting started? Someone who wants to build something meaningful in AI, but doesn't know where to begin?
Far be it for me to give anyone any advice. I always randomly decided what to do next.
Yeah.
Um, But I mean, I used to say just go for what interests you, and AI is a generally applicable tool, so you can do whatever you want. If you're actually in AI, you might be in the application area for AI. We're really, really scratching the surface of what can be done with this technology today. So there's a lot of room to innovate and to find the area where you think you could use AI in a creative and new, novel way. If you are in AI itself, there's so much that in the way of limitation in the AI that we have today. I mean, sometimes, the power of Claude and Gemini and GPT-4 might overwhelm you and think, okay, we're done. Like it's just basically from here on, it's just incremental improvements over something that's awesome anyway.
Yep.
But no, no. In fact, what's happening is that we've pigeonholed into using one AI approach, which is neural networks and deep learning, in a specific architecture, which is the transformer architecture, scaled in a specific way, trained in a specific way, which is language modeling. And we've ended up with these AI systems that have some fundamental limitations. For example, they can't online learn in the world. They can't be easily embodied. They have major energy inefficiencies. So there's a lot of room for improvement. And so if you're in I would say broaden your perspective on how
Yeah.
things could be improved.
Yeah, it's exciting time, I think, both to be on the actual core development of these AI products, but then also obviously the application. So let's get started with Rendered Exchange. We've invited a creative to share a piece of work. We're going to get Babak's perspective on the piece. So today we're featuring a piece by Rohan, an LA-based 3D visual artist, musician, and producer who produces these crazy designs and builds these surreal, immersive digital environments that explore scale, music, emotion. Basically, think surreal architectural spaces that blend logic and emotion. So the piece that I'll be sharing with you is this piece called The Infinite Jazz Cafe. Okay, so that is the piece by Rohan. So would love to know any first reactions from the piece.
I couldn't hear the voice, unfortunately. Yeah, I love jazz, and I like the piece. I like the rendering. My first thought was, well, if this is jazz, I would want it to kind of jazz around a little bit and not be just this one like very square kind of design. But yeah, I like the choices that it's giving you. But then I also started thinking about, we have this jazz station here in the Bay Area. It's Jazz 91. Love to listen to it. And one of the things I really like about it is the fact that it's DJ'd. Someone very passionate about jazz and knowing much more about it than I do is playing these songs. They're often, you can tell that they're so into it and they're doing it for the love of it. And they play these like vinyl records. And so and give depth to what you're listening to. And I really, really appreciate and like that. So, sometimes giving people choice actually is less interesting. Well, so I guess I'm getting old because I'm talking about linear radio and I don't DJs and vinyl.
I mean, I have a vinyl right here, so I
There we
will.
go.
There we go. I love your point about how you almost want it to be like moving. It's almost like this juxtaposition of like this like very linear movement against this like very freeform jazz.
Yeah, I know. Like, when they play jazz, I mean, the same song will never come out the same. And sometimes they take these like leaps of faith, like they go off on a tangent. And even when you talk to the musicians, they're like, yeah, we went off that way because it felt like that. And we weren't sure if we could land it back in or not, but it worked. I really like that. And of course, it also speaks a lot to the depth of talent that they can pull something like that off. But believe it or not, sometimes coding can feel that way too, especially if you're like designing something or thinking about some aspect of a system that allows for you to kind of go off on these kinds of tangents. And maybe 4 times out of 5 it doesn't work out, but the 5th time when you land it, you really land it.
People usually don't think about coding as so freeform. It seems very analytical and very structured. So it's interesting to see that sometimes it can actually be a little bit flexible, like jazz.
So I think so.
I would love to play a short clip of Rohan describing the Infinite Jazz Cafe, how he built it, what inspired it, and the emotional intention behind it. I think you'll appreciate it's very layered and personal with his entire process.
So the name of this piece is The Infinite Jazz Cafe, and it's essentially my take on a Japanese hi-fi jazz listening lounge inspired setting with a record storage shelf that kind of extends on forever. And kind of what inspired this piece was my love for sense of scale. And I love things and settings and environments that make me feel small. And I think a perspective breaking moment in art and in real life is just one of the most powerful experiences. So I love to incorporate that in my work whenever I can. And in the context of this piece, it essentially started with me constructing the scene with a floor to ceiling record storage shelf. And then I thought about increasing it a little more. So I added another layer or another story. And it looked cool, but after I added, I think about 4 stories, I thought, what is this going to look like if I stretch it out into space infinitely? Because there legitimately is that much good jazz to me. And so I extended the scene kind of indefinitely. I selected hundreds of my favorite jazz records and just classic albums in general to populate the wall with. And through a simple linear animation for the shelf and then some different camera cuts to give a sense of perspective in the space, I was able to tap into what I think was a really unique feeling with this one, and paired with one of my favorite John Coltrane songs of all time, Naima. I think it conveyed a sense of scale that I previously hadn't been able to capture in my work. So I'm particularly happy with this one.
Yeah, I mean, now that I've heard that, he's definitely conveyed that, a sense of being little in the presence of greatness in many ways. Like, it's not just the fact that you've got infinite choice there. It's the greatness of the feeling that you get when you, especially if you're like new to jazz, you come into it and you've listened to a few songs. It could be any genre, and then you dig deeper a little bit and you get a sense of, wow, this thing is deep and wide. And I'm only scratching the surface, and there's so much quality here. That could freak you out, but at the same time, it could be really cool. But he's also stretching it out. He's also, I think it's also, the depth of just one song. Like, you have this John Coltrane song, and you listen to even that one song and that one rendition like multiple times, and you keep finding new things in it. So I think he's been able to capture that at many dimensions, which is that's art, I guess, right?
It,
Even his own art, I think, could be seen in many dimensions.
100%. And I think what's so beautiful, you mentioned that it does make you feel small, but I feel some people feel very comforted in that fact. And some people feel very overwhelmed that they can feel so small. And it has me thinking, like, have you ever designed a system to basically intentionally make someone feel small?
Not intentionally,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. I mean, one of the things that gets me thinking is there's so much quality even in this one genre, and how many of those records that were created with love and put out there are actually being appreciated. That's the other aspect of
Yep.
it. It's not just feeling small, but just being helpless in bringing this quality and this beauty to the world.
Yeah.
That's also there too. I'm sure when those artists did it for the love of doing it,
Right.
less so than garnering people's attentions. But
Yep.
there is that aspect as well. But in my own work, um, in some ways, what got me into AI was actually to make people not feel as special as they feel. Humans seem to think they're the center of the universe and the most complex and most, intricate and intelligent beings that is possible. And
Yeah.
then they grow these stories around that compel, folks to do things that I think, increases suffering in the world. And I lived through, a regime that did that and an ideology that did that. And a lot of it came back to how special we are and how we're made in the image of God. And therefore, when God says something, this is what we need to do and all that. And in some ways, I was thinking, well, if humans are able to actually build something that demonstrates that it's not that special, you can actually create it using materialistic, information-based algorithms, that would help in some ways. I think when you're young and naive, you kind of have these sorts of
Yeah.
ideas. So when you mentioned that, I was thinking it kind of took me back to that. But in a disappointing way, it hasn't changed anything. It feels like the specialness of AI really has not had any impact on this sort of religious mystical thinking about how special humans are. They just, I mean, somehow they
Yeah.
hold these two contradictions in their heads at the same time and they don't care.
That's really interesting. It's almost like the ego of humans at play here, and the idea that maybe if we humans ourselves were able to design something as intelligent or able to actually do what we do, maybe we think, hey, we're not that special, we're not that different from even other creatures like an ant or something like that.
Exactly. That was the quest.
Yeah.
I think it's analogous to, astrophysicists trying to find life in other planets. I don't know how many of them are motivated by the same motive that I had when I was a kid and
Yeah.
got into AI, but that might also, I mean, you would hope would have the same kind of impact. That famous image that they snapped from Earth, like,
Yeah.
looking back at Earthrise. It's supposed to make you think you're little, you're just insignificant in this world. But, has it really had an impact in the way we think about the world and our ideologies? Unfortunately, not the scale and scope of impact that you would hope.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful in a way. And I think especially, I never even, when I looked at it, I never thought about just like the scale of amount of jazz artists that there are and just musicians there are. And so then feeling small, both in terms of like being someone consuming the art, but then also the one producing the art, I think is really interesting. So before we wrap this segment, I did ask Rohan to reflect on the question, as AI becomes more distributed and personalized, what does that mean for the future of creative tools? Will artists collaborate with systems or will they compete with them? And I know at the conference we were at recently, we talked extensively about this. So would love to share your Rohan's perspective and then, kind of get your thoughts on that as well.
So, in response to how I think AI could impact my work, the things that I spend the most time on these days are largely music production and 3D design. And luckily, AI has had no impact on those fields for me, and I don't foresee it having one for a long, long time either. And I think that's for two main reasons. One of which is that both of these practices require a heavy, heavy level of intentional detail that AI is not capable of recreating. or capturing. And I think that secondly, me, myself, I have a really unorthodox approach to making music and designing that I've kind of stumbled through over years and developed and refined. And I think there's a scatterbrain element to it that does translate well into my work, but can't really be optimized by any technology. It's just something, it's between me and my brain and finding ways to kind of execute what I can ideate on. And so in response to the prompt of, as AI becomes more distributed and personalized, what does it mean for the future of creative tools? Will artists collaborate with systems or compete with them? I personally think that there is a context for AI tools within art and design. In 3D design settings, I've been involved in projects where I had to recreate a space that contained lots of one-of-one objects. And these pieces were never to be seen in too much detail. So I was able to leverage AI 3D generation softwares, which can basically give you a model from a static image, which is absolutely crazy. For anyone who's not familiar with how much effort it would be to create those things by hand, this saves you like 99.99% of the time you would spend. I don't think artists will collaborate with systems because I don't think you can collaborate with the system. I really think that's something that has to be interpersonal, and true collaboration is between humans. So I think that AI can serve as an assistant to artists, if at all. But I think in general, feeling that I've kind of come across with many of my peers and fellow artists is that we are going to be in a bit of a competition with AI, because at the end of the day, these are technologies that are trained on the actual work of tons and tons of people who didn't have, the ability to just generate ideas out of thin air. And so I think the fact that something so powerful is starting to exist that can basically attempt to recreate what artists take hours and months and years to do, a technology that can kind of generate similar looking things in split seconds, is definitely a threat to people who pride themselves on their artistic process and their unique ability to create these things. So in general, I am excited to see where AI technology goes specifically within the context of art, but as a tool rather than a, perceived collaborator or a generator. And I really think that if you're using AI to enhance your work and as a base layer for which you then put your artistic interpretations on top of, there is potential for it to really help with your workflow. But in general, I think the best art is always going to come from humans till the end of time.
What are your thoughts?
I think in some ways I do agree. In some ways, maybe I can add a different angle to it. But as a father of two artists, I empathize.
Yeah.
So let's look at this from a number of different perspectives. AI today can be creative. So it's not that it just regurgitates what artists have done. It can actually create new art if we allow a machine, recognition that it can be an artist, then it can. However, and it can be creative, but it can be creative mostly in mixing different art forms and within the scope of, what it has seen. One can argue that humans are kind of the same in some ways too, but humans can change their worldview as they learn in the world, and current state-of-the-art AI can't.
Okay.
And also, current state-of-the-art in AI is really not that good in extrapolating, out in the wild, something brand new that has never existed before, or, so, if you pick the genre and you describe what you're looking for and have it create a few samples of that, it will surprise you and it'll do a pretty good job. But if you ask it to come up with a brand new genre that has never existed before, I think it's going to really struggle. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is, I think we will probably as a phase enter into a world where the value of art will have something to do with whether or not a human was involved. And that might not be the quality of the art. It might not have much to do with the observer of the art, but it will have a lot to do with the creator of the art. And just simply saying it's like if someone comes up with a really nice Van Gogh looking picture, but it's not by Van Gogh, even though it might, from a quality perspective and emotional impact perspective, be on par or even better than a Van Gogh. The Van Gogh will sell for a lot more. So something similar to that, I think. So we will get into that kind of a world. However, from a commercial and artists being able to actually make money perspective, I think we're going to hit some rough times. And
Yeah.
the reason for that is because, um, the consumer of art
Uh-huh.
is not necessarily looking for who actually created it. They're primarily maybe mostly looking for what kind of impact, how does it talk to me, what is the story it's telling me, and what kind of emotion it's invoking in me. And AI will be able to produce that as well, and maybe in some cases better than humans. And we see that in certain art forms. Spotify is already making money off of AI generated music.
Yep.
The brutal fact. I'm not condoning it. It's just what it is. So that can be an issue. Last thing I'm going to say here is let's not dismiss the collaborative potential for two reasons. One is just imagine you have this like white canvas and you have like 10 really accomplished artists coming in and each kind of adding a little bit to it. And when the art is completed, that art might actually be really, really cool.
Yep.
But you can't quite say who was the author of that art. And, in some ways, linearly in time, that is what happens. Like you get inspired from some artists that came before you and you do something a little bit different to that. So you can't quite say that your art is uniquely you. No, you actually stood on
Yeah.
the shoulders of great people who came before you. So that collaboration, like it or not, is part and parcel of how art works anyway. Dismissing the involvement of AI as a collaborator kind of takes away from that, because even AI's art is standing on the shoulders of great artists that went before.
Right.
So I wouldn't dismiss that out of hand. I think some really good art can come out of that. And the second part of the last part of what I wanted to say is that AI is a tool for
Mhm.
us currently. While we can imbue it with some autonomy, I do think that, like any other tool, we need to rise above and master it and start utilizing it and putting our fingerprint and our preferences on it. And even if it's as simple and low a bar as just describing what we want it to produce and then like maybe following up and having it make changes to that, I don't
Yep.
see anything wrong with that. Yes,
Yep.
it's natural language and it's much simpler and it doesn't have as much of a, talent as far as like, physical movement stuff to it. But yeah, I mean, that's been ever since we stopped using our hands and used a paintbrush,
Yep.
that this is a continuum.
Yeah.
And so let's not dismiss that either.
I think what'll be really interesting to see is as this technology gets better and better, will there ever be a moment where it is actually more creative than a human? It's actually creating things at a faster pace, newer concept, newer things that than humans are.
I think it could be. Yeah. Again, going back to the first part of what we talked about and just, are humans that special? I don't think so. No, I don't think so. And we can talk about it. It has a lot of other implications, but yeah, it could be.
Loved this little rendered exchange. All right, so let's move on to the last segment. We're calling it Would You Ship? And so we're going to talk through this kind of bold product idea. And we'll decide if this is something that we see consumers responding to. Do we have the tech capabilities to do it? And ultimately, would we ship it? So at this conference we were at, you were telling me about this product that involves, that you built that involves um, evolving web experiences in real time, basically through consistent, constant A/B tests and basically optimizing content and interfaces with a specific goal in mind, right? So, for example, engagement. So, wanted to kind of take that concept and scale it up. Imagine walking into this smart workspace or retail environment and everything adapts to you. So not just the screens you're looking at, but the entire space. You have the lighting, the sounds, the visuals, even the smells. So Rohan's doing this, designing these kind of digital spaces virtually right now. But what if we were able to bring that like level of adapt experiences to the real world? So, for example, you walk in and there's cool, minimal environment and these spatial sounds, and I walk in and then it shifts, and now we're seeing warm tones and we're seeing these like surreal motion graphics, and it starts to smell like vanilla, right? So, this is basically a system that would learn from real-time feedback. And this could be things like your eye movements, your posture, your voice, your breathing patterns, right? Basically everything that captures your behavior. And yeah, we could refine it and match your emotional state. So would you ship a product like that?
Oh, what a creative idea. Oh, absolutely. I love it. I love it. I mean, I can riff on that forever. It's really cool. So at its core, I think what we're measuring and optimizing for is interestingness.
Uh-huh.
And interestingness is interesting because it has a dynamic temporal aspect to it. And something that might be very, very interesting to you one time, twice, three times, the fourth time round is not as interesting anymore.
Yeah.
So, one riff on your idea would be to actually measure that interest from various different people interacting with your artifact, and you know, as it wanes or as it differs, try to attract that in a different way
Yeah.
as well. So that would be really, really cool. There is a technique. A friend of mine, Ken Stanley, came up with it. It's called novelty search, and
Okay.
it's where the objective is novelty. So you're not actually going for an objective specifically. You're
Yeah.
going for novelty. So if you visited some point in that search space already, you don't have to go there anymore because it's not novel anymore. And it's awesome in creating interesting concepts.
That is awesome. I definitely have to read up on that. But interest is interesting. I love that. I think one of the limitations we have today is a lot of the things to measure interest, which I don't think we really do today at scale, is a lot of these are like biometric kind of responses and they're so subtle. If we were to build something like this, who would govern this, right? Is it the platform and the product? Is it the person, the individual themselves? Is it the public? Because once you're able to like understand what people find interesting and you're able to understand their breathing patterns and stuff like that, it's taking it sort of to this like dystopian next step that I don't think we really have yet.
Yes. Well, if we're going for interestingness, in some ways that is a shared responsibility because if you do show interest in something that is outside of what we would consider ethical or moral and so forth, it's on you, really.
Yeah.
So there is that aspect for sure. Governing a system that has some level of autonomy has its challenges, but it's not impossible.
Uh-huh.
Putting safeguards and sort of you know uh, some sort of framing around where it can go and where it can't go and what is acceptable.
Yeah.
You can do that to a certain extent, but it's a continuum. I don't think you can guarantee that it wouldn't produce something that is
Yeah.
unacceptable. But, we live in a world where we only basically admit personhood to humans. And so responsibility has to be exclusive to humans, and the AI systems can't be held accountable.
Yeah.
That is one of the major issues that we have is if an AI system autonomously does something wrong, you can't put them in jail. And so it ends up making it even more important for us to take those aspects of the design of these systems into consideration and taking them very seriously.
That makes a lot of sense. And it has me thinking, is this something we need to be thinking about now? Like,
Oh, yeah.
is this
Oh, yeah.
is a product like this feasible? Like, do we have the technology to start driving something like this? Or
Yeah, 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 yeah. A product like this is very much feasible.
uh-huh.
And I think that, yeah, I think we do. Yeah, I think we can build it. I think it'd be really, really fun and cool. And I think we can make it safe. Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay. So if we had the resources to build and launch it tomorrow, where
Let's
in
do
the
it.
first place, where would you want to build it? Like what space, where would people respond to it?
Yeah, I would create an immersive. We do actually have an immersive space here at the lab that we
Oh,
use to showcase our AI. It's
cool.
3 walls of touchscreen, high resolution displays, wall to wall.
Yeah.
And just imagine like walking in there and being shown various different things, and you can interact with it, and that interaction denotes some level of interest that you have in it. I don't know about the smell thing. I don't know if the technology is quite there yet or not, but that I'm sure people are working on that. I think tactile, there are some technologies there, but
Yeah.
at least a subset of what you described, I think we could set up and experiment with it, and it'd be really, really fun.
Cool. Well, I would love to maybe share a demo of the lab that you have set up now that has some of that stuff. I'm sure people would be really interested in seeing that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Cool. And I guess last question on this, if we were to name this product, what would we name it?
Oh. Well, you came up with the concept. You need to name it.
Hmm. I was hoping you would name it, so I didn't think of one, but I can
Uh,
follow up and give you a good name.
yeah, yeah. Well, these days your go-to is ChatGPT,
Yeah, I'll
and
hit ChatGPT.
embarrassingly, it does come up with much better names than you do.
I know. Has some creativity in that space.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Where can people follow you, learn more about the work that you're building right now, and learn a little bit more about both the AI for Good initiative and some of the work at Cognizant's AI Labs?
Absolutely. I mean, the only social media I'm active on is LinkedIn. Please follow me on LinkedIn. And these days I'm posting a lot. I mean, especially given the open sourcing of the platform. I respond to messages there too. So, hit
Yeah.
me up.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was a pleasure. I enjoyed every second of our conversation. Learned a lot as well.
Same here. It was a pleasure talking.